Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back to another round of the breakdown with your host, BaseDaKID, Tony, the pugilist boy. We are the children of the game. Tony, how has your weekend been? Talk to me.
It's been wonderful, my friend. It's been wonderful. I have been thoroughly entertained by an absolute plethora of boxing from the Thursday night all the way through to the early hours of Sunday morning. I was very tired, I must say, on Sunday, having lost an hour of my sleep, but it was worth it.
Well, technically,
How are
did you
you?
lose an hour? I'm just thinking, did you actually lose an hour? Because it just meant that the boxing itself came on that hour earlier than what it was supposed to. So did you
Yeah,
kind of gain it back?
I should have done if I could have slept in, but I had a christening the next day, so it literally meant that I went from boxing earlier on, and then by the time I'm like in sleep, I'm like, oh, I gotta get up.
Okay, fair enough. I hear you. I hear you. Now, my weekend was all right. I mean, similar to you, it was a lot of boxing to consume. Way too much to really go into huge detail with on this show, but I do know that the main talking points we will be getting through, and yeah, while we won't be able to get through every fight, I guess we can just kind of give shout outs to maybe the ones that we're not going to have time to properly go into. But yeah, before we get started, as we always do, please greet the great defeaters who are on time. It looks like we've got quite a few people watching early, which is good.
We do. So I'm pretty certain somebody's comment is missing from earlier on. I remember going in and seeing somebody. But anyway, first, it looks like Maestro checking in from all the way over in New York. My brother, how are you, Maestro? Hope you're well. Ellis Vlogs in the house. My guy, White Tony, fresh off of a hell of a appearance last night on Monday Night Smoke. Well done, my friend. Good to see you. Fight fan Danny in the house. Hope you're well. If you're not already subscribed, guys, go over and subscribe to Fight Fan TV live on YouTube and Instagram. Great content. North Bank Bren, my fellow gooner in the house. Big up to you. Mulla, welcome, my friend. A member as always. You man are done for. Jam Down 187 and my guy G Chain in the house. Bless up all of you all.
What's happening, peeps? What's happening? What's happening? All right, so normally we like to do things in, or you like to do it in the chronological order. However, today I feel like we should do it a little bit differently. Big up to J Lanks who just popped in, one of the originals. So we have to big up J Lanks every time. So I want to do this a bit more like match of the day. So you know how you get the main fight at the start, and
Yeah.
then like they give you like some of the other more competitive ones. Then you get one of the main ones just at the end,
Okay. I'm cool with
right, to
that.
keep people engaged. So I think, all right, cool. So if that, with that being said, big up Bigsy Biggs. First time I've seen you. So yes, bless up and thank you for joining the channel. Right. So I think that the first fight that we should discuss should be, you know what? Let's talk about Benavidez versus Plant. Let's go big at the start.
Okay. We're going in for the most talked about fight of the weekend, the most heralded, the most notorious. So we'll give it all the acronyms it needs, but everybody gets the coup. It was an entertaining fight. Obviously, it's got the hype of two guys who are both shooting for titles. Plant having had his shot with Canelo Alvarez. David Benavidez looking to get a shot at Canelo Alvarez. Lots of trash talk in the upshot of it, and it didn't fail to deliver. I thought the fight went pretty much as I thought it would do, with Plant being very much on the front foot in the early rounds, gaining an ascendance and creating problems for David Benavidez, building up a healthy points lead, I thought, over the first 4 or 5 rounds. But then David Benavidez started to come more into the fight from the 5th round on, and effectively used faster hands, more accurate shots, combinations in order to wear down and eventually get the win over Caleb Plant. Plant, gave everything in every round that he could, but you could see he was physically wilting towards the end. And it was at that point, especially the last 3 rounds, it looked like potentially that David Benavidez could have got him out of there. But, he hung in there. He showed the heart of a champion, and he has to get his props for doing so. But there's no doubt about who won that fight, because Caleb was dealt with in that second half by a masterful performance by David Benavidez. He didn't show some of the flashes that we've seen previous. It looked like he was more sitting down on shots as opposed to flurrying. If we look at his past fights, he does a lot of like shoe shine stuff where, he throws 10, 12, 14 punch combinations. Less of that in this fight, more sitting down and trying to get that stoppage via, 3, 4 punch combinations. Effective work though, enough to get him each of the second half rounds and obviously win it very impressively.
You done?
Go for it.
Okay, so my thoughts on the fight, and funny enough, it's actually just come on the TV. I was trying to watch some of the other undercard fights just to make sure I had them fresh in the mind before the show. I wasn't particularly impressed by David Benavidez in this performance, if I'm totally honest with you. In the first half of the fight, there was, to be honest, in terms of actual boxing skill and know-how, like Caleb Plant pretty much showed that he is a level above David Benavidez when it comes to just technique, general ring IQ, and even punch selection. We all knew David starts slow, which is kind of what he always does. But in this fight, this is the first time where I've actually seen him. It looked like, normally it's like he's starting slow, like he's just trying to get the measurements of his opponents and just trying to slowly wear them down and then apply pressure from around round 5 onwards and then sort of take people out later. In this one, it actually looked more like he didn't know what to do to close the distance on Caleb Plant in those first rounds. And the thing what I actually was impressed about by Caleb Plant to start off with, which he quickly abandoned. I think this is part of the thing where that front foot pressure from David Benavidez starts to pay dividends. When Plant was holding his feet in the center of the ring and basically taking half a step back or half a step forward and landing that jab, hitting the jab to the body or the straight right to the body, David Benavidez was hesitating and hesitant to actually throw with him, and Plant was having the huge success. But what Plant did, unfortunately, was revert to type pretty quickly. From about the end of the second round onwards, he started circling the ring. Now, that's okay if you've got the ability, number one, to walk someone onto the shots, and then you've got the gas tank to constantly be doing the hitting and moving. But we all know he doesn't have that in his locker. When he was standing and holding his feet, he was having more success, much more success than David did. When he started circling the ring, that's when David started to be able to basically just walk forward and start to apply his pressure to Caleb Plant. Obviously, invest in a couple of body shots in the early rounds, but I felt like even he was going for the head a lot more than he should have in the first half of the fight. If he had have invested everything down to the body, he potentially could have got the stoppage that he was looking for in the second half. It's only when he started investing into the body from about round 6, 7, 8 onwards is when you really started to see him take the legs away from Caleb. But up until that point, even though he started to take over the fight in the second half, like Caleb, the only reason I feel like he even got a foothold in it is because Caleb did what we all normally thought he was gonna do, and that's gas out. He wouldn't have gassed out if he kept his feet a lot more, and stopped trying to move and circle. But again, I feel like that's him being still kind of caught between this old pure boxer style to this now boxer puncher style, just not knowing when to stand, when to move, when to trade. What I will say is, I think there's two things. Number one, there's a lot of people that feel like Kenny Bayless did a disservice to this fight by allowing Caleb Plant to hold as much as he did. But I'm actually on the other side of the coin in that I actually think he done a disservice to both guys in this fight by not actually allowing them to work up close. Anytime they got anywhere near each other, unless their arms was basically out wide, like nowhere near, unless it was like basically head to head, Kenny Bayless was on his stop, jump in and separate them. There were several times in the fight where I saw Caleb went to go and hold. He went to go and hold David, and then I saw David he was about to wind up for something, or he was about to throw something over the top, and all you have is stop, and Kenny Bayless goes to separate. So I'm like, well, let them work on the inside. If they're gonna be up close, you might as well let them get there and let them do some work. So my issue was not that there was too much holding. My issue is that the holding and the clinching was being broken up before there was anything to actually happen in the situation. For instance, if you look at the fight just before that one on the card, which was the Ramos versus Spencer fight, there were several times where they was on the inside getting busy, even potentially clinching each other, but working their way out of the clinches and doing damage up close. That's how you should have let it go until the point where the only time you're supposed to stop it in the clinch is when there's a stalemate for several seconds in that clinch and no one's trying to advance or no one's trying to work. So yeah, the fact that he was not allowing that work to be done is to me what kind of muddied the fight and stopped it from being as good as it could have been, and potentially stopping that KO that David could have got. But that also being said, David Benavidez, the issue has to then come. He landed a lot more shots on Caleb Plant than Canelo did, yet he wasn't even able to drop him once. Forget the stoppage, but he wasn't even able to get him off his feet. And to me, there has to be some questions now about either how effective he is against people that are of the same level as he is, as opposed to a lot of the overmatched opponents he has been fighting. That to me is now somewhere where I have to say, okay, I need to see more, because with everyone else, there's loads of different combinations, loads of the shoe shines, loads of, winding up, trapping people in the corners. And then for a fight like this, all of a sudden that stopped. And I just have to say to myself, is that because you realize that this is a much better opponent and you can't get away with the same things? Or is it that you're just not capable of doing it to someone that isn't just overmatched and oversized? I'm not sure. But in terms of the person who won the fight, the correct person did win the fight. But I feel it was, and I was predicting David to win this fight. I was predicting the same way as everyone else, how it goes through. I said the same thing. I did think he would get the stoppage, but sort of around 9 to 11, just based on accumulation. But that same thing being said, it was like you can kind of just tell that the work wasn't, to me, being done the way it needed to be. He wasn't able to create separation. Benavidez wasn't able to basically find the right shots. There was a lot of shots, but there wasn't a lot of the right shots coming in to really sort of take over and make it a dominant performance, because it wasn't dominant. He won it by a round or two, but it wasn't like a fight where you say, oh yeah, like he just beat him up incessantly for like 12 rounds and maybe Caleb got 2 or 3. It was like you could, it was close. Some people could even potentially score it 6-6 if there's certain things that you agreed with on Caleb's side, or some of the earlier rounds, if you decided to give him one of those 50-50s instead of putting it the other way. It's potential. I wouldn't have scored it that way, but there is arguments where you can see that potentially I can see how you can swing around here or there to Caleb Plant. And the fact he was still there fighting on the second half of the fight, I thought that was good. He showed heart, he showed grit, and also I guess in this one he wasn't going to be denied. But I feel like the win was more based on what Caleb was not able to do as opposed to what David was to do. That's kind of my overall thoughts on the fight itself. But yeah. Unless you want to go to the chat real quick, I say we move on, because like I said, there's a lot to go over today.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there is a lot of feelings for both the referee and David Benavidez's performance in the chat. So I've brought up the most salient points that have been brought up. Look, I can't say that your viewpoint is wrong. I certainly don't think it was anywhere near as close as you kind of alluded to. That obviously you scored it the same as me in that Benavidez won. I can't see how anyone could possibly see that as a 6-6, but I'm not saying it was a wipeout either. I also think look, Caleb Plant is a very strong fighter. He's got heart. He's got, he's a former world champion. His standing in the world probably needs to be a little bit higher. His stock needs to be a little bit higher because he's been in with the best. He went 11 rounds with Canelo, and now he's given David Benavidez a hard night's work as well. But I'm certainly still of the belief that this probably didn't look like David Benavidez's best performance, but when you consider who he's in against, it probably is his best performance. I'm not going to put any blame on Kenny Bayless. I thought there were points where he was a little bit intrusive, but I also think there were plenty of times where he let the action flow, and it was, you could see easily David was pummeling the hell out of Caleb in the second half of the fight, and it's not like he didn't get off his shots. He got them off. If you're worried about holding, then just make sure you don't get caught holding. He didn't utilize his footwork sufficiently to be able to create the distance needed to stop Kenny Bayless calling for breaks and stuff like that, and getting
Who are you referring to?
David Benavidez. He didn't use the footwork sufficiently. So there were points where Caleb would get into a clinch, and that would be immediately stopped by Kenny Bayless. So yeah, it is what it is. I'm going to move on. Great fight. I enjoyed it, as I said. We look forward to seeing where Benavidez goes next. There was talk about David Morrell, Charlo, but I know what I want to see. It's going to obviously have to wait a while, so he'll have a tune-up in between. But Canelo is the one.
All right, moving on. Christian Mabili versus Carlos Gongora. Go for it.
Okay. Can you do that one? Because I want to do. Actually, can we do Colbert Valenzuela? Because
you want to do that now?
Yeah, because it was on the same card. I want to mention that was actually a decent card, because the Ramos Spencer fight that you mentioned was exciting. That was a good fight. Before that was Chris Colbert against Jose Valenzuela, which I want to talk about. And obviously before that, there was Cody Crowley. So overall,
versus Abel Ramos, yeah.
Yeah, props to that card, because that was a very entertaining card. It was difficult to watch it all because it ran simultaneously as the card featuring Comey against Ramirez, which was a real pain. Thank you, Danny, for allowing me to come on your watch along. As you know, we both tried to watch both fights simultaneously, and slight delays in one or the other strip meant that I was seeing some action before you saw some, and you were seeing some before me. But the Colbert Valenzuela fight was a very exciting fight. I've got a little bit of footage to show just to talk about it while it's on. So Colbert, having lost recently, coming back in, trying to re-establish himself. Very fast fighter, extremely fast fighter, has super fast hands, going in against a strong Jose Valenzuela, 12-1, with a better knockout record, having 8 KOs. Now, in this fight, I think Colbert was probably seen as the home favorite, or the favorite to win this, but Valenzuela came out first round, and then you're about to see him get the first round knockdown, which was a sweet left hook. You'll see it again here. He's waiting. The reach from Colbert. Valenzuela reads it. Reads the jab. Moves his feet. Boom! And there it is. The southpaw gets him with the left hook. And as you see, Colbert ends up rolling on the floor in a big 360. It was a devastating punch, and obviously it causes a 10-8 win for that round. The story of the fight is Colbert then tries to get back into the groove, but he takes several rounds in which to do so. And in trying to get into the fight, he's using his very fast hands. But what he's doing is using a very light pouring jab at very fast pace. So he's getting a lot of points scoring with jabs, but they're very light. They're barely touching, if anything. And you see the CompuBox figures there. Jabs, 47-15. Unfortunately, that didn't stay up long enough for me to show you. But the difference in this fight was the power shots. Colbert just basically was pity-pattering with his shots in an effort to get back and claw his way back into fight, whereas Valenzuela was having big punches, hitting this guy with power shots on a regular. He had big rounds in round 6 and a never even bigger round in round 8. Didn't get a repeat knockdown, but those 2 rounds alone were huge for him. Now, the controversy is CompuBox figures show that Colbert only outscored Valenzuela in 5 out of 5 rounds. It was a 10-round fight. But obviously, if he outscores him in 5 rounds, that's an even fight. But Valenzuela gets a 10-8 round. So under no circumstances can he possibly have won that fight. Now, you'd have to be a Martian not to be able to see that what Valenzuela throws is 3-4 times harder than what Colbert throws. He's literally beating the bejesus out of the guy from pillar at the post. Round 8 especially, gets him in one corner and just tees off on him. Some of the shots that I picked up, you can see the pain in Colbert's face. So this was an extremely disappointing result to see that Colbert wins the fight on a majority decision. No, on a unanimous decision. If it had been majority, it might even stomached a little bit more. But he won it on a unanimous decision, 95-94, 1 round in it. Well, sorry, judges, but you got that hella wrong.
Done?
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, but I actually disagree with you. I just watched the fight about an hour and a half ago. I knew obviously who won. I hadn't watched any of it prior. I hadn't seen any of the scorecards or anything. I heard about the knockdown. I thought there was actually more than one. So I scored it, and I scored it 96-93 to Chris Colbert. Like, there was... So that's, for anyone who's not sure what that means, that's 7 rounds to 3 minus 1 point for the knockdown in the first round. Now, the only rounds I gave to Venezuela was the first round, the 6th, and the 8th. In all the other rounds,
wow,
he had moments, maybe he might have had like a 20 or a 30 seconds within the entire round where he may have got off 1 or 2 good shots, and then a lot of everything else was actually being blocked by Chris Colbert. If you see anyone who goes back and watches a lot of those rounds, a lot of those flurries that Venezuela is throwing, Colbert is blocking a lot of them on the gloves, or he's managing to roll them, or they're hitting elbows and hitting arms, so they're not actually scoring shots. Yes, every time that he hurt Colbert, like he visibly hurt him, whereas Colbert probably didn't hurt him as much, but Colbert landed more power punches overall. He landed more jabs, and he was busier and more effective throughout more of the rounds in general. So, yeah, overall, I don't really have an issue with the scores, with the scorecards. If anything, I felt the judges were slightly a bit more generous towards Venezuela than I was. And just so you know, Bren, I am not trying to be controversial in any way, shape, or form. I watched it about an hour and a half ago, and I was scoring it live. So I literally had it 8-10 round 1 to Venezuela, then 10-9 Colbert in the second, third round 10-9, fourth round 10-9 Colbert, fifth round 10-9 Colbert, sixth round 9-10 Venezuela, seventh round 10-9 Colbert, eighth round 9-10 Venezuela, ninth round 10-9 Colbert, and then the 10th round 10-9 Colbert. As you guys can maybe see on here.
Wow.
So yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with the person who won the fight. I don't actually have an issue with it. I can understand if someone is looking mainly just for power shots and like maybe who looks like they've hurt whom within each round, but there was only 2 or 3 rounds. There was only about 4 rounds in the entire fight where I would say that Colbert was hurt, and it was momentarily in a lot of those. So yeah, realistically, Colbert outworked him in the majority of the rounds. He outlanded him in the majority of the rounds, and it's not just jabs. He hit him with swift power punches in those rounds as well. Whether or not they were like lethal or they had the guy wobbling on Queer Street or whatever, that's irrelevant. The shots landed, and if you look at the damage, if you look at the facial damage, it's not like, oh, it was all pitter patter and nothing got through. Like there was clear landing there. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the fight. No issues with it at all.
Okay, we agree to differ. So be it. And you have a fellow agreeant in Ramzino. Welcome, Ramzino. Never seen you before, so welcome to our pod and thank you for contributing. Obviously, a few people are also similar to viewpoint to myself, but let's move on. Lots to get on with. You wanted to move to Mbili versus Gongora.
Yeah, Mbili versus Gongora. I literally only just watched. I was watching it at the same time as I was watching Ramos and Spencer, so I was kind of in between. But to be honest, it was one of those fights you didn't really have to try and score it. The first 2 rounds you could probably give to Carlos Gongora, or you could definitely make an argument for either or. Even though he was on the back foot, he was landing and picking the better shots at the time. But just the pressure from Christian Mbili just staying on Gongora's chest, he basically he just outworked him and was just overwhelming him for the first 6 rounds, as I said it would happen. But the switch that actually took place in round 7, now this may have been Christian Mbili trying to take the round off, but that's when Carlos Gongora actually came back into the fight and started landing some heavy and vicious shots where you might say, oh, maybe Christian Mobili's actually blown himself out here because he looked like he was starting to gas, he was starting to wilt. He got hurt in the second round. Remember that, then ended up holding on and ended up sort of falling over Carlos's foot. So the referee ruled it a non-knockdown, but it was you could tell that there was a heavy shot that hit him and hurt him before that. And in every round, like Carlos was catching him with just enough shots to make him say, yeah, I can't just be like defensively loose here. I've got to stay switched on because these shots are hurting. Yeah, and then but then after sort of round 7, you had round 8, which was, you know, Barnstormer. Then you went to sort of round 9 and round 10, and at that point, that's when you feel like Carlos's gas tank started to empty, and he was more in survival mode. He was still exchanging, but he was definitely just looking to kind of see those rounds out and not open up too much to get himself hit and hurt. But yeah, it was a great fight. It was hard to find. I had to find an Argentinian stream of it in order to watch it. But that was fine because I watched it with no sound, which was cool. So I just got to see action for action's sake with no minute rest in between. All good. I enjoyed the fight. I want to watch it again after this, just for my pleasure rather than from an analyst point of view. But it was definitely an enjoyable fight.
Yeah, I mean, much like yourself, I had to go to the. I can't even remember how I found it, but literally, I remember the fight's about to start. The fight's about to start, and I'm rushing around, going all over the social networks, trying to find where in the world this fight is being shown. And yeah, like yourself, I had to find an international point on my IPTV to actually watch it.
Oh, I'm sorry,
But
Tony. Just before you carry on, just to answer this question by Mr. KWX Ben 1966. So he's referring to the last fight we was talking about. What does outworked mean? Does it mean busy without landing or with landing? I'm saying with landing. He was out throwing, out landing, and you know, just basically catching the opponent. But the opponent was having more visible success in the rounds that he scored, like his biggest shots. That's basically how we assess that. Sorry, Tony, please go ahead.
no problem. So yeah, very entertaining fight, and you got the prediction pretty much bang on. Gongora is hell for anybody. He literally is hell. I mean, you know, he wobbled Mbili. Um, it was a very good fight. Both guys were, you know, teeing off on one another. You know, it was a toe battle. Nobody was hiding from anybody. You know, each had his level of success throughout the fight in different rounds. It went one way, then the other way, then back the other way, then back the other way. But overall, I gave the fight to Mbili. You know, he goes on, but this was definitely one of them fights where he's going to say, I earned my money tonight. And you know, look, this is like the coming out fight. This is the fight that you go, I'm here, I'm on the scene now. I want to be talked about in and amongst the true contenders in this division.
Okay, right. So I guess what have we got that we? All right, let's talk about. Let's get Lyndon Arthur's fight out of the way.
Okay. I did say I would give this at max 2 minutes. I don't even think I need that. I was unimpressed. Obviously, Lyndon's opponent was changed within the last 24 hours of the fight. He ended up fighting Boris Crichton. You know, Crichton, yeah, you know, he's a hard man. He looks like a hard man. You know, he's well defined. He obviously keeps himself in shape in the gym. But having look, you know, when I look at the fight, you know, there's a guy who was prepared in Lyndon Arthur for what was supposed to be originally an IBO world title crack. Now, if you're ready for that matchup, then I'm not saying he should have dealt with Crichton lightly, but I would have thought a better performance would have been in place. I would have thought he would look sharper. He would be, you know, more accurate with his punching. You know, the one thing that he has is a great jab. He used that well, but overall, I thought he laboured in this fight, and it was way closer than it needed to be. Wasn't impressed by Lyndon Arthur's performance.
Okay, North Bank. Just to let you know, I will send you a link for the Mbili Gongora fight on Twitter after the stream. All right, so cool. Yeah. So look, the only thing I can say is that it was a last minute opponent the day before the fight, or was it on the day of the fight? It was one or the other. So in that particular respect, I can't be too down on him because obviously you look at Boris Crichton's record. It was 10-1. I think it was 10-1 with 8 KOs, if I'm correct. That might be slightly wrong, but ultimately at that point you would say, well, he's not. He's been there as like the backup in case something happens. Like I doubt they've just plucked him from somewhere. If it happened on the night, then he was scheduled to fight. So I don't know anything about Brian Suarez, but I've got to assume that the style was different. Who you're training for is different. You haven't seen this guy. This isn't who you're preparing for. So I will give leeway in that aspect. However, what I will agree with you is for Lyndon, who is supposed to be above these levels anyway, even this quote unquote IBO light heavyweight title, realistically, he's kind of supposed to be above that and above, this vacant journeyman that, or not journeyman, I don't want to say that, I don't know him, but this Argentinian in Suarez, who none of us know, is not on anyone's radar. You should still be able to deal with someone of a Boris Crichton's level, who's probably of a domestic level, English to British level at that. If you claim to be above that, you should, number one, you shouldn't be getting the distance, and number two, you definitely shouldn't be getting rocked several times in the first half of the fight. Now, yes, you did put him down towards the back end, so we give you that. Maybe you got into your groove a little late, but yeah, it was a flat performance. He did say he was unimpressed, and it wasn't a good performance from himself. It was unimpressive. So he's acknowledged that. But again, I will give him the slight caveat of that last minute opponent, and clearly this other guy been training. So yeah, at that point I've got to put that into consideration and say I will give you the benefit of the doubt on this one, but I need to see more from you on the next one when there isn't someone that gets pulled out. Now, I quite want, I'd like for him to accept the Dan Aziz fight. See if you can petition them to make that for the IBO light heavyweight title. Dan's got every other one of the belts, so there's absolutely no reason that a Brian Suarez is going to be higher ranked or in a better position to take that fight. So get Dan Aziz in there, put all the belts on the line, British, Commonwealth, European, and put the IBO light heavyweight title on their line as well, and take that fight, and let's see where you're really at. Because all these circumspect ones now, you've had your three comeback fights after Anthony Yard. It's time to get busy with a proper marquee fight now. That's my opinion on it. But yeah,
100% agree with you, sir. 100%.
Good stuff. Okay, now let's move over really quick to the Queensbury card. There was actually some decent fights on there. The atmosphere was fairly good. I don't know if you watched any of it because you're not looking like you did.
So I'm only doing that because I'm like, there was so much boxing. I'm confused over who was in what. Because one of my fights of the weekend is Kane Baluta. That was on Queensbury, wasn't it?
That was, yes.
And I've got full details on that. So if you want me to lead off on that fight, I'm ready.
Now let's save that one to the end. Let's talk about the other two really briefly. So first one, I do have to give it, even though I haven't watched the entire card, I watched enough of it. The atmosphere was good, and a lot of the fights were fairly evenly matched. So I have to give Frank Warren his props. It was an entertaining one. The Moises Atuma thing, don't need to really speak about that, but we all know that at this point he's just going to get those knockouts, and then we have to see what happens when he steps through that. I was
sorry, can I just say, if you haven't seen the knockout, it's worth a watch, because he did a George Foreman to Joe Fraser, where he lifts the man off the floor with the second shot. It's a left hook, right uppercut combination. When he throws the right uppercut, he lifts the man. I mean, he's kind of jumping in a way, but he lifts him off the floor. Great knockout for young Moses Atuma.
Okay, so Fight Fan, if you can let us know why you can't have the European and the IBO belt on the line at the same time, that would be wonderful, please. And two Skyliners, he says, why would Aziz put belts on the line against Lyndon, who brings nothing to the table? I've spoken to Dan. basically he wants to be able to win his British title outright if he can, but he's realizing that there's only one, the only person that will likely take a fight with him for the British, or that he could reasonably have it in on the line, would be Lyndon Arthur. He said pretty much everyone else would probably not accept a fight on those terms. So you put all of those belts on the line, it should entice Lyndon to come to the table, because Dan wants the Lyndon Arthur fight. So in order to get that fight, you got to have the bargaining. So you've got the platform and you've got 3 belts for him to win. Even if he dashes 2 of them afterwards, those belts can actually, they can be a segue. And if Danny's saying the IBO can't be on the line, fair enough. But I don't know how that is the case when it's still not viewed as one of the top titles in the division, but he will tell us that moving forward. Right, so so I want to start first off with Raven Chapman versus Linda Lecker. Let's sort of get through that one really quick. Now, to be honest, I actually think that in terms of performance, in terms of work rate, this was probably one of Raven's better performances. I still like her debut fight the best for me in terms of just sort of like savagery, but you can tell that she's actually refining her style a lot more. From this particular fight, there was a lot more head movement in this one than there was against Guanini 2 fights ago. And when she was fighting Fatuma in the last fight, you could kind of see that Fatuma was just sort of trying to cover up and sort of just shell up a bit more in that one. But yeah, she was picking punches very well. She was investing to the body a lot, which is what she said last week would be her game plan. One of the only criticisms I had with regards to that is when she had her opponent on the ropes, she would dig on the right side, then to the left. It was almost like a shoe shine to the body, where I feel like she should have maybe more dug one in from the right hand side, switched over to, sort of maybe pivoted to the right, and then as she's planting her feet, then strike with the left or go again with the right. So rather than just sort of standing square in front of the girl, tapping, like, hitting away, dig one, move, dig the other, place those shots. And I feel like she maybe could have got a stoppage, or she could have at least dropped the girl a couple more times earlier on in the fight. But yeah, overall, that was my quick impressions of the fight. It was a good one. I'm looking forward to her next fight, which could potentially be Sarah Mahfoud, which would be for the WBC silver title. And then that would then progress her on to potential world titles after that, the fight after that, or the next fight afterwards. So yeah, let's see where she goes from there. What's your thoughts on that particular fight, Tony?
Yeah, good performance from Raven. Congratulations on the win. Professionally done. Didn't mess around. Just kept a girl, on the end of her punches, and good work rate throughout the fight. I thought that was the thing that I took from that, was the work rate.
Okay, cool. All right, let's do very quick Nathan Heaney versus Jack Flatley, and then we'll go to your fight. So okay. Yeah, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, that's what made this card so good, was the fact it had 2 very good fights in the Heaney, Flatley, and obviously Kane Baluta. Heaney 16-0, Flatley 23-1 in a 10-rounder. It was a rematch from their fight of September last year. Heaney is huge. He's just a huge middleweight. This was for the WBA Continental Middleweight title. And, he's just a huge muscle-bound tank. When you talk about like fighters who you could call mean machines, this is Nathan Heaney. He came out in that first round like a man possessed. He came out hitting with huge punches, with bad intentions. He literally hit Jack Flatley on every part of his body, from the tip of his head to every sinew of his torso. And he set the tempo from the get-go. A very fast tempo. Flatley was hard you know, it was hard for him to get into this fight because Heaney's pressure and work rate during the early rounds was superb. You know, I remember round 3 again, you know, Heaney loading up really strong punches, working from the center of the ring. Round 5, the head clash, which caused a cut to the eye of Flatley. But, you know, look, I'm talking like it sounds like a one-sided fight. It wasn't. Jack Flatley was in, but he was like, okay, you want to come to that? I'm coming with the smoke. I'm ready for this. So he was picking shots, and he was actually throwing some vicious shots himself. And believe it or not, before the cut, Heaney had his nose busted up, and his face was beginning to look rather messy. So it was an interesting fight because, you know, you had two guys who were suddenly cut after the halfway point of the round of the fight. Round 9, flat-footed Heaney comes out, makes a big effort. You start showboating, but again, you know, he's really terrorizing Jack Flatley, and you know he wins the decision by 97-93 on 2 judges and 99-91 on the third. You know, it's just a very good domestic scrap. If you haven't seen it, go have a look. Very entertained by it. But Heaney now, obviously, with this win, moves up. And, you know, I don't think he's ever going to be elite world level, but he's the kind of fighter who can cause trouble. Kind of reminds me a bit of Chris Smith. You know, a big guy for his weight. You know, good hands, not the greatest feet, but he will cause trouble, and he hits hard.
Okay. I haven't really got much to add because I didn't pay too much attention to the fight in terms of breaking it down. It was fun, fairly entertaining from what I saw, but yeah, I decided to use that time to take a nap for the you know, the American cards. So I watched back parts of it. From what I saw, it looked like Heaney was pretty much in control, similar to how he was in the first fight. You know, before the unfortunate head clash, which called that one off. Yeah, it was a pretty good performance. He's a ticket seller, so he's going to get paydays, but I definitely feel like this is his level. But that being said, it's not a bad level to be if you get to headline the sort of the Telford International Centre. You know, they maybe bring it to somewhere like the Copper Box as well, or York Hall, where you can get those nice enclosed environments. So you can just have the crowds come in and, you know, singing your praises and just yelling loudly. You know, that's his position. I guess big fight nights for him, not necessarily with, you know, big titles on the line, but just, you know, big nights, big fights, and hopefully fairly decent paydays as well. I'm with it. Cool.
Got a nice strap to go with it as well. Nice WBA Continental Middleweight title. So, you know, look, there'll be people coming to pay a visit for that. So good on him. Well done.
All right, now we can go to your fight.
Okay, so
Andrew Kane versus Enoch Baluta.
Oh, what a fight! Oh, what a fight! I mean, you know, if you haven't seen Enoch Baluta before, he obviously fought Michael Conlan and Liam Davis in his last 5 fights. 2 losses that, you know, were, you know, not the worst defeats for this guy. But, you know, what you got to realize, if you saw those fights, you realize this guy comes to party. He's not ramping. And, you know, Andrew Kane was giving it the hype before the fight. He's obviously got a very impressive record, 10 fights, no defeats, 9 KOs. So he obviously sees himself as a KO artist. But Baluta came in and literally threw down the gauntlet from round 1. But Kane had him down. Kane had him down 2 times in the first round. He also had him down 2 other times, but they were pushes. So, you know, Kane's really on his money in the first round. But Baluta comes back and he's looking very strong through the rest of the round. Even although he's been down, you know, he's definitely not out of this fight. He shows great heart and determination to get up off the canvas and come back into this fight. He does. There is talk that Kane broke his hand in the fight, and he blames that the fact that he hurt his hand badly on the fact that he wasn't able to finish off Baluta. But Baluta came back with a vengeance and basically outworked Kane through the middle and ending rounds of this 10-rounder and had Kane down badly. In fact, I think I got some footage for you. So what were your thoughts while this is going on?
Well, my thoughts actually are, if we're looking at, so would you say, right, that Andrew Kane had the better shots in terms of the more impactful shots, but Enoch Baluta, I guess, outworked him and outlanded him throughout the fight? Would you say that's fair?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Okay. So who did you have winning?
I had Baluta on work rate.
You had Baluta on work rate. Okay.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then I don't see how you can then not have Colbert on work rate earlier on in the night when he basically done the exact same thing.
Totally different performances, in my opinion. Because what Kane, the major difference is the type of work that Kane does, yeah, is hard punching action. Whereas what Colbert does is feather-fisted pity-patty.
Yeah, but Kane is the one you said lost.
Yeah.
So Kane and Valenzuela were basically the same in this. One of them, one set were going to punch hard, the other one's going to outwork you, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if that's the case, like, you can't have it that way for this one.
So what
and
you're
then
saying is you think
when the guy got dropped twice and you still think that he won, but on the other side you're saying that that's what. So it's almost like you snookered yourself there.
But hang on, Baluta hurt Kane. Colbert at no point hurt Valenzuela.
There was a couple times he hurt him.
No. Come on.
We're not okay. Maybe not hurt in the maestro sense of hurt, but he got caught with some. Caught with some hard shots.
Not even close, my friend.
Remember, I just watched the fight. I literally just watched the fight.
I can't compare those two fights. I'm sorry.
All
Move on.
Cool.
Give us. So who do you think won?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't really scoring it, right? But from what I saw very similar in the sense that in all the rounds, even though Kane looked like he was having more of the success in the rounds, in terms of like the actual, the heavy shots, basically, like the ones that are taking, going to take out the opponent, etc., etc. Like Baluta was doing more of the work. Like he was outlanding Kane in every round, even in the round when he got dropped twice, he was still outlanding him. So to me, I felt like that was so if someone was to say, all right, he got it on the work rate, I would have to agree with him, because from what I saw, it's almost like Kane was just saying to himself, all right, do you know what? I'm not even going to try and like outbox you. I'm not going to try and outland you. I'm just going to wait for my moments and I'm going to take you up, because to me, this isn't getting points. So it doesn't matter how many shots you land on me. I'm going to catch you and I'm going to take you up. To me, that's what it looked like his game plan was. Whereas Baluta was like, nope, I'm trying to take you out, like, but ultimately I'm gonna win the boxing match as well. So that's kind of how I saw it. So like I said, while I didn't score it, I couldn't see why Baluta got the decision. And I don't really have an issue with it just off of the items. I might go back, rewatch it and actually score it properly. But I don't have any issues with the result. So
well, it was a split decision. 95 to 92 for Baluta, 94 for 93 for Baluta, and 96 to 91 for Kane. So, your view.
So 8 rounds to 2.
So, it goes to show how subjective this sport is, but ultimately a phenomenal fight. Baluta's engine is to be heralded. He's definitely somebody who has come over to these shores several times from Romania, and he is worth his money. He's worth his money every time. And I'm happy for him to have won this one because obviously, as I said, he's meant, he's come over against Liam Davis, he's come over against Mickey Conlan, and he lost those close decisions. But on this occasion, he wins, and he deserved it because he's a hard-working fighter. He's he's not a journeyman. He's a real hard, just slightly over gatekeeper kind of level, I guess. Not in the elite category of the weight, but certainly, if anybody aspires to being a true contender, Ian Baluta will give you a real good fight. Interesting that we saw on the same weekend fights with this one and the Colbert Valenzuela, the winner getting dropped early. Other thing I just noticed was this fight, some of these fights this weekend on the back of Pattinson versus Jenkins last week, we got our fill. Anybody who thinks boxing is dying, you must be mad. You must be mad because we have seen great boxing these last few weeks and we've got more.
I mean, there was no need for that anecdote, but all right. Okay, so right, so that's the end of that card. Let's move over to Seniesa Estrada versus Tina Ruprecht. We can kind of go through that one fairly quick. So ultimately, from what I saw this fight, Seniesa actually performed a lot more of a pure boxer in this one, sort of picking her shots from the outside, moving away, like boxing on the back foot, not really looking to engage with Tina, which is a shock because Tina's normally the one that's all about movement, and Seniesa is the one that's a bit more front foot, switch it in, ambidextrous, looking to sort of get on the inside and sort of do work. But a lot of it was a lot of counter punching. I feel that the scorecards were again very outrageous from Top Rank in terms of a Seniesa Estrada fight. In the last fight she had, I can't remember the name of the lady off the top of my head, but I think all the scorecards were like 99 to 91. And on this one, there was all like 100 to 90, which, wasn't correct for me. There was definitely a couple rounds that Tina won, in my opinion. But that being said, Seniesa had a fairly dominant performance even on the front foot and the back foot. Unified the minimum weight or the straw weight division. She now holds the WBC and the WBA titles. Yokasta Valle has the WBO and the IBF. So that hopefully will be the fight they look to have next to unify. But there's not a huge amount to really go on that one. If you watched it, what were your kind of thoughts?
It was a nice fight to watch. I thought Ruprecht was definitely worthy of more than no rounds in the fight. I thought she was competitive in all rounds. Look, I could tell this was a girl who said, this is my shot to move up the rankings in terms of, everybody knows Estrada, whereas my name probably isn't as popular. And she looked like she came out to try and make a name for herself. And I give her credit for that. Estrada definitely didn't get an easy night's work there. She had to work every round of those 10 rounds, but she did ultimately get the decision. I think it's going to be interesting when she moves up weight.
Well, the thing I'll say real quick about obviously Tina Ruprecht is she has actually already beaten the lady that has the other two belts. Like she beat her earlier on when she was obviously for the WBC title that she has. She beat her, I think it was about three or four fights earlier, before she obviously went on a run to get the other belts. It might have been maybe even 6 fights. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to double check. But yeah, so she's actually already holds a victory over the lady that's got the other 2 belts. So that kind of stands her in good stead, which also means that Seniesa, if she can get that that undisputed fight, that will probably put her in good stead to actually become undisputed. And she has said once she does that, she wants to move up to light flyweight, go undisputed there, then move up to flyweight and go undisputed there. So we'll see what happens, see if she can make that happen. But yeah, let's move on to Jose Ramirez versus Richard Comey.
Cool. Good fight. Very entertaining fight. People who know anything about my past, I'm a former coach at the All Stars Boxing Club. I used to box there as an amateur. And that's the gym that Richard Comey boxes out of when he's in the UK. So I'm all in on Team Comey, but I'm beginning to get to the point now after losses to Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, the draw with Jose Pedraza, and now the loss to Ramirez, that I'm beginning to think, is it time where he no longer can compete at that elite level in the light welterweight division? Richard is a hard as nails type of fighter. He gives it his all. He trains real hard. I kind of worry a little bit when I see that he's, sometimes he's back in Ghana and he's training there. Then he comes to London and he just train. Then he goes to America and he's training. And much though I don't worry about people moving like Josh, Anthony Joshua going to America and training, but I like people to have a base where you can say, this is where I'm, based out of, and this is where I'm going to do my hard work. I'm not so sure if that works for Richard Comey, because he's needed an injection in his game plan. He's needed something to affect the way he boxes in matches. Look, what he did against Lopez, the way he approached Lomachenko was the same way he approached his fight with Ramirez. There was nothing different that made me think, you've come with a new game plan, or you've worked out a strategy which will, affect, someone like Jose Luis Ramirez's pressure fighting technique. So it was a point where I'm like, how much is left in the tank? Because he's took some hard fights in the last few years, and I now begin to wonder whether he's got much left in the tank to be able to compete at the elite level, especially in this division. He certainly can't go up a division, because that's even worse for him. But in this division right now, I'm particularly worried. But in terms of the fight, it was a humdinger. Again, a really entertaining fight. Ramirez was just all over Comey with his pressure fighting technique, working the body, real, blitzkrieg, hard, tough punches. But Comey, look, to his credit, he kept in there and he was firing back and he was trying his best to hurt Ramirez. But you know what? Ramirez is just too hard a fighter for him. Literally, just too hard a fighter. And eventually, he wore down Comey with the combination punches and stopped him in 11th, which I thought was a good stoppage for him, because he was just taking punches unnecessarily at that stage of the fight. Ramirez, of course, now goes on to look for rematches potentially against Josh Taylor or any of the other killers in that division, which there are several of.
Okay, so yeah, initially I thought it was a 10-rounder, not a 12-rounder. So my prediction was that it would go points, with Ramirez dominating kind of 8-2, purely because Richard Comey, look, former lightweight, he's not a legit 140 guy. I reckon he probably still could actually make lightweight. I don't feel like he's big enough really at the weight, and his punch power hasn't been the same at super lightweight that it was at lightweight either. So I don't feel like his punch has traveled up with him. You got that, plus you've got kind of the miles on the clock. But I thought that he would see it out when I found it was a 12-round, obviously I guess my prediction slightly went out the window. But that being said, because he got stopped in the 11th, I guess I was still right, because as a 10-rounder, he made the 10 rounds, which is what I thought he would do. I thought he would there'd be a couple times he would land in between Ramirez's shots. Stylistically, he had the style to beat Ramirez. He just didn't have the size to do it or the punch to do it. And yeah, he just kind of got overwhelmed. He got sort of overpowered and just bullied a bit throughout the fight. And he dug in. He made it competitive, and he did his fair share. Won a fair few rounds as well. So I have to give him his props there. But ultimately, like the investment in the body, the constant pressure, the constant being pushed back, it just sapped a lot of the strength out of him. And we saw the final results. He got dropped I think he got dropped at the start of the 11th, and then he was tucking up nicely, and then got caught in the he got caught with one of those sweeping body shots. Those ones that seem to hurt the most. So they look like they graze you, but they just seem to take all the wind out of you. He backed off, took the knee, and just decided to see out the 10 count. So that could now potentially be the end of his career. Not just at an elite or a high level, just potentially, because the way he dropped to the knee kind of suggests to me that maybe he doesn't want it anymore. And him being 36, yeah, that I can see him potentially announcing his retirement in the not too distant future. I think he's a proud man, and I don't think he wants to necessarily be in fights or be fighting if he doesn't realistically think he can win at the level he's operated. I don't see him going down to a level of fighting because ultimately they're not going to give him soft touches to fight. He's either going to have to fight up and coming contenders, because that's what Top Rank are going to do, and use him as that stick, or he's going to be fighting the people at the top of the division who we've already established are way too big and strong for him. I don't think he's not going to get any real soft touches, in my opinion. So just for that, I think he might call it a day. And yeah, if he does, it's been a good career. He's done himself. He's done, Ghana proud, and just keep it moving. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that one.
Cool.
Okay, so last but not least, because there was nothing of note on the Sky Sports and Boxer card to talk about as far as I'm concerned. Maybe Giles Levi was an okay fight, but again, I didn't bother to watch too much of it. I was flicking in between the two shows. But yeah, as for the benefit of time, we want to kind of get out of it in the next sort of 5-10 minutes. We'll go to the main event of that card, which was Lawrence Okoli versus David Light. Now, as you said that you can pretty much only give this 2 minutes, I'll let you start off.
Okay. Obviously, for those of you who are regulars to the Undefeated podcast on a Monday night, there was a conversation with Henry and Lawrence Okoli last night where they basically said, they know that they didn't perform well. They realize that there are better days to come, but they still think that they've got more than enough in the tank to be able to dominate in this division and do what they need to do. So, listen, inactivity has obviously played its part with Lawrence Okoli. His whole protracting getting out of contract with Matchroom and moving over has not served him well. He would have been better staying and just having an end fight with Matchroom and then moving on, rather than having a big gap in his resume. The new trainer, Sugar Hill, I have no idea what he did. I saw absolutely nothing from his performance that made me think, oh, new trainer. I didn't see any sitting down on shots that made me think, oh, he's generating more power. It was just lazy. It was lazy. The jab, for a guy of his height and length to not have an effective jab is criminal. It's criminal. I mean, David Light, he's just not good enough. That's just not the level you should be fighting when you're world champion. And when you've got a guy like that, this is where you should be showcasing. Look, I'm expecting Lawrence to start bringing out, Ali shuffles and, bolo punches and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm thinking to himself, well, you got a light touch here, bro. no pun intended, but you got a light touch. So this is a fight that, you know what, showcase some of the things you might have learned in your time. Showcase something that we ain't seen before. Can you go southpaw for half a round? Can you, mix up a 10-punch combination? Just show us something different. But no, alas, no, alas, no. An absolute snooze fest. Just not the one. But, look, homeboy came on last night, tried to give it the I've still got it talk on Monday Night Smoke. I'll wait and see.
All right, so Robert Broney says, to be fair to him, Lawrence did sound like he had a cold going into this fight. Well, he always sounds like that, so that's no excuse. Here's what I'm going to say. Now, there's a lot of people that will have their opinion, obviously rubbish fighters and whatnot. And there'll be people that will just, go home, they'll be at home, they'll watch a stream or they'll watch the highlights afterwards and they aren't really invested. They just want to have an opinion. I don't really take a lot of those into mind too tough. However, me being a person that has actually spent money to go to Lawrence Okoli's fights in the past, I definitely get to have a say on his levels and kind of what he is and what he isn't doing. Now, to talk about the fight on Saturday, sorry. The first few rounds were extremely poor. They were laborious, they were flat, they were slow, like there was no jab. He was allowing David Light to essentially just walk onto his chest throughout the majority of those rounds, hit and hold as he normally does. A lot of hugging, a lot of pushing him back to the ring ropes. I felt like he kind of, in the third round, it looked like he had a pretty good round in the third in terms of like punch placement, the movement. He would look like he was doing a bit better in that particular round. Then fourth round pretty much kind of went back to the same. Fifth round. In the sixth round, it looked like he started to wake up a bit. Like if there was ring rust, it was starting to scrape off, and he was just getting his distance. He was understanding his task a bit more. So the sixth round looked fairly decent. Seventh round went back to more of the same. Eighth round, more of the same. Ninth round, more of the same. 10th round, more of the same. Now, in my prediction video, I said that I felt like he would probably labor to a points decision, but I was optimistic that maybe in the 10th round, he would be able to have accumulated enough damage, wore David down enough that he could maybe land something heavy on his chin and take him out in about the 10th. Now, in the fight, what happened? In the 10th round, he lands 3 straight rights on David's chin and he wobbles him, is not able to pick the punches to get him out of there and put everyone out of their misery at that particular time. So we got more hugging, more holding between rounds 11 and 12. And yeah, my issue with this fight is that it was almost a carbon copy of the Sislak fight. Now, that one, Sislak made a bit more of a go of it, and Lawrence had to work a little bit harder, but it's the same thing. As soon as someone was able to nullify the right hand and get on the inside, you resort to type to just holding, negating, and then just basically from that point your whole rhythm's out and you can't get your rhythm back. The problem with Lawrence Okoli is once he loses his rhythm, it takes him forever to get back into it. And if anyone has the ability to just offset it a little bit, he goes into that almost like survival mode, and basically just grits it out. Now, the problem he's going to have is you've got people like me who, again, I've literally gone and bought tickets to his fights. I haven't gone into like the cheap seats. I've been near the front of the arena each time. And each time that's happened, I've been disappointed. And I've said, I'm not doing this again. Now, if that's me, as just a general, as a, somewhat of a enthusiast and somewhat of a person that's going to actually like try to give you the benefit of the doubt, what do you think is going to happen for the people that either just the casual fans who come to, you know, a decent night here or there, or for the people that just don't like you, period? Like, you're not going to be able to put bums in seats, you're not gonna sell, which ultimately means you're not going to get put on these big cards, or you're not going to be headlining cards. At least you're gonna get pushed back to undercards, or they're going to be just throwing people at you left, right, and center, hoping that one of them beats you so that you no longer become their problem. Because I tell you one thing from now, unless Lawrence can fix up and, you know, go maybe more to how he was when he fought Gavatsky or Jazuski, and even though those men ain't even good fighters, but just have a bit more excitement and a bit more poise and panache within him, the only thing keeping him in any type of employment is that belt. And as soon as that belt goes, he goes as well. The only way that doesn't happen is moving up to heavyweight, because the same tactics that you employ now, you're not going to be able to get away with at heavyweight, because you're not big enough and strong enough to do that to these 16, 17, 18, 19 stone men. So you're going to have to employ different tactics, and that may be where you come a cropper. But ultimately, like, something has to switch, because remember, Vladimir Klitschko, one of the most successful boxers of all time, one of the greatest heavyweights of, you know, of all times. If you look at resume, record, everything, he got frozen out of places like America and the UK because his style was not fan friendly, even though he was getting the knockouts as well. So there has to be something. You've got to find something within you that says, all right, I just need to. If these guys are all overmatched, then you know that, like, because you said none of these guys have even come close to beating me. If that's the case, take some more risks until you get to that fight where you know that this is the guy that can really trouble me. You might as well take those risks, or just look to make it more entertaining, because this fight was no different to the last one, and, you know, it looks like he's reverting. And that's the problem. Like, whereas before there was some improvements, you saw the improvements under Shane McGuigan, and then it's like he reverted to type. Then he's been out of the ring for all this time, and now it's like everything that he learned from Shane, it's almost like he's unlearned it in the blink of an eye, and he's reverted to type, and he hasn't quite been able to grasp the Kronk style that Sugar Hill was trying to teach him. So, okay, cool. We've got to give him a grace period for this one, because he's been out of the ring for 13 months. But this is like the last grace period you get. Like, that you can't have any others. So there can't be I'll just keep winning, I'll look better in the next one. No, because if you look like that again against anyone, you're not gonna get a top billing. You can't, unless your money is guaranteed for every single fight. Like, your money is gonna go down, because your visibility is gonna go down. No one's gonna want to watch you. And that's pretty much all I've really got to say about it. And I don't even want to be as critical as I'm being, but again, as a person that pays my hard-earned money and has done on several times, I feel I've got the right to have this take. And, you know, if he sees it and he's unhappy, hey, it is what it is. If Henry sees it and wants to say something, cool. Like, I'm hearing it. See me every Monday, see me every Tuesday. You know my channel. You know where to find me. You know how to get a hold of me. We can have a conversation or whatever. But that's my opinion as a paying customer. And I'll leave it there.
Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe we've come to the end of our review of the week's action. It has been long. We've gone on a little bit over our normal allotted time. However, with the amount of fights that we had to review, I hope you've been suitably entertained.
Hold on a moment. Hold on, because I did agree to do something. I'm looking for where is it? Here we are, the clipboard. Right. So for everyone who's watching the show, you will see this comment. Right. So this is Maestro's video for Tyson Fury, where he's promised to deliver Vim. Now, it was sent to me just before the show. He's asked me to put it in the chat, which I have now done. And I'm starring the comment as well to make sure that everyone can see it and everyone clicks on the link just as we are about to finish the show. Yes, so that we can see if he sticks to task and his punchline, and he delivers those savage punchlines to Fury the same way he has done to Dillian White, Anthony Joshua, and many others that he doesn't particularly care for. Go for it, Tony. Finish your sign
you.
up.
So thank you very much for that, Maestro. We will be over on your punchlines, having a listening for that Vim, as Base has alluded to. Everybody else, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your comments in the chat. We do appreciate it that you come on every week and you give us those, because we feed off of that, and obviously it helps us, keep the flow of the show going, because we can see what kind of things people want to hear about. As Base has done, we're now showing our links into where you can find us. For myself, it's Tony the Pugilist Boy. Pugilist Boy can be found on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Instagram. The Instagram, though, is Pugilistic Boy. I had my Pugilist Boy removed, so it's now Pugilistic Boy on Instagram.
Lovely. And as you can see, for me, BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual, I'll be back to putting out videos tomorrow, probably one, possibly two videos tomorrow, one Thursday, basis picks on Friday, maybe another video Saturday, potentially, depending on what time I decide to go to the fight. I will be live at the AJ fight, so I will be feeding some footage to the Undefeated podcast while they're on their live stream. Sunday we will have a weekend wrap as normal, and then we sort of take it from there. Like I said, you can find me even on Twitter, even though it's B_A_S_E. Just type in BaseDaKID there, and I normally come up as well. So please like and subscribe. I'm over that 1,000 subscriber mark, so all I got to do now is just get the watch hours, and then I can start to potentially do the watch alongs, as I know that people are interested in those. As soon as I get my new laptop, I will be looking to do a much delayed live stream for that 1,000 mark. So yes, thank you very much. Tony, you got anything else you want to say before we sign up?
No, have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the AJ fight. We're looking forward to, no doubt, coming back next week and getting all the vim on that story. So,
all right. Peace out, guys. Bless up.